He also said he'd turn people against me because he was Nick Carter and he had the power to wreck my life.
They weren't just a boy band. They were the boy band.
Here we are with the Backstreet Boys. Hey, what's up? Starting from over here, what's your name, buddy?
The Backstreet Boys didn't just sell over 130 million records. They ruled the 90s, made millions swoon, and became a global phenomenon.
Did I finally find me a river that could lead me out to the ocean?
But behind all those perfectly choreographed performances and chart-topping hits was a world of secrets, scandals, and shocking betrayals. 'Cause what if I told you their biggest enemy wasn't a rival group, but the very man who built them? And if you're in here like, what? How's that even possible? Well, why don't we get into how the mastermind behind their success led them into one of the biggest financial scandals in music history?
Yeah, he was entitled to 90% of your business because if it wasn't for him, you'd be nothing. So do you want 10% or nothing?
This is the real story of the Backstreet Boys. Buckle up, 'cause trust me, this story reads like a Hollywood script, complete with dreams, deception, and a dose of drama.
The woman just filed a lawsuit against Nick Carter, saying he raped her twice and gave her an STD back in 2001.
No one saw coming. Picture this: 5 young guys, each from different walks of life, brought together in Orlando, Florida, a city better known for Mickey Mouse than music royalty. But in the early 90s, it wasn't just a tourist hotspot. It was ground zero for the next big thing in pop music. Enter Lou Pearlman, a businessman with a grand vision and an even bigger appetite for success.
And what a lot of people don't understand, the man responsible for this was Lou Pearlman.
Inspired by the UK's Take That, he set out to create America's ultimate boy band.
We heard of a man named Lou Pearlman who was in Orlando. He's an entrepreneur there, and he was starting a record label called Transcontinental Records. And we approached him with the idea.
But he didn't just want 5 pretty faces. He wanted powerhouse vocals, charisma, and the kind of chemistry that could make teenage hearts race worldwide. The auditions were brutal. Imagine a room packed with hopefuls, each fighting for a shot at stardom. But one by one, 5 voices rose above the rest.
I'm 16. And how old are you? 19. And 21. And 20. And 14.
First up, AJ McLean, the rebel with a voice like honey and just the right amount of edge.
I can feel the sun, you're everywhere.
Then Howie Dorough, smooth and soulful, with vocals that could melt hearts. Enter Nick Carter, the baby of the group, but with a voice and star power that made everyone stop and listen. But they weren't complete, not yet.
And along with him and us, we felt like we wanted to add a couple more members to the group. So we got Kevin, Lou knew Kevin.
That's when Kevin Richardson stepped in, tall, brooding, and with a deep, rich voice that grounded their sound.
Now I'll be holding you.
And here's the game changer. Kevin had an ace up his sleeve. One phone call to his cousin, Brian Littrell, and just like that, Brian was on the next flight from Kentucky.
Last one to get involved. So after they got Kevin through Lou, then he called me, and that's pretty much how it happened.
Boom. The missing piece. The Backstreet Boys were officially born.
My name is AJ.
What's up?
Hi, I'm Kevin.
Hey, this is Howie D.
And I'm Nick. And I'm Brian.
And here's where things got real. From the very first rehearsal, their chemistry was undeniable. But raw talent wasn't enough. Because if there's anything we know about the music industry, is that you need to grind hard for that success. That meant performing anywhere and everywhere. High schools, shopping malls, amusement parks. Picture it. 5 guys giving it their all in front of crowds that didn't even know their names yet. But here's the thing, though. What started as a wild, half-baked idea was about to erupt into one of the biggest musical phenomena ever. And trust me, this was just the beginning. Crazy, right? But here's the kicker. What if I told you the Backstreet Boys, yes, the very icons we all adore,
Baby, don't go breaking my heart, breaking my heart.
were once totally snubbed by the U.S. music industry? Can you even imagine? At a time when grunge and hip-hop ruled the airwaves, record labels scoffed at the notion of a boy band making waves. They thought 5 guys harmonizing was so last season. Big mistake. But hey, You know what they say, one man's trash is another man's treasure. So while America was busy sleeping on them, Europe was wide awake. Across the Atlantic, the Backstreet Boys weren't just popular, they were superstars. They were selling out arenas, topping charts, and building a frenzy that would soon turn into a full-blown global takeover. Then came the breakthrough. In 1996, they dropped their first album, Backstreet Boys. In Europe, and it was an instant hit.
How does it feel being so young to have a hit single that all over the world or all over Europe? How does it feel?
Just like that, we've got it going on. Quit playing games with my heart. These songs were everywhere, on the radio, in clubs, on TV. Europe was in love before America even knew they existed. But the real game changer, 1997. That's when they finally released their U.S. debut album, featuring Quit Playing Games with My Heart, and boom.
Quit playing games with my heart.
Suddenly, America was paying attention. The timing was perfect. Pop music was creeping back into the mainstream, and the Backstreet Boys were ready to own it. Then came Backstreet's Back, 1997. And just like that, they weren't just a band, they were the band. Sold out tours, #1 hits. And before you knew it, the boy band craze had officially begun. And then came 1999, the year that changed everything. If the Backstreet Boys were big before, this was the year they became unstoppable. I Want It That Way dropped, and boom. An instant classic. The song was everywhere, every radio station, every music countdown, every fan's CD player. And then, Millennium. Their most hyped album yet. The anticipation was insane. And when it finally dropped, it shattered records. Over 1 million copies sold in the first week alone. Think about that. In 7 days, they made history. Their faces were everywhere. Their songs, anthems. Their concerts, selling out stadiums in minutes. They weren't just selling music anymore, they were selling a movement. But behind the scenes, it wasn't all perfect, because while they were ruling the world, a storm was brewing, and no one saw it coming. The late 90s were the golden age of boy bands. But let's be real, there was only room for one king. And in one corner, the Backstreet Boys. I want it that way. The originals, the veterans, the global icons. In the other, NSYNC. The younger, flashier up-and-comers, hungry for the throne.
It was a little bit more darker with blacks and darker clothing, whereas NSYNC were the guys next door.
And the craziest part? Their biggest rival wasn't some random group that came out of nowhere. NSYNC was built by the exact same man who built the Backstreet Boys. That's right. Lou Pearlman, the so-called mastermind behind BSB, turned around and created their competition.
Lou Pearlman created your group's biggest competition with NSYNC. Were there any NSYNC songs that you were pissed got offered to them first?
And he didn't just form another boy band, he copied the formula.
Basically the same producer, Max Martin, that did a lot of their songs. Did our songs.
The same sound, the same choreographers, even some of the same songwriters. It wasn't just business, it was personal.
When NSYNC came along, it was like if we said no to something,
they got what
threatened. It was kind of threatened to us that, hey, you know, somebody will say yes.
And the Backstreet Boys felt it. Nick Carter didn't sugarcoat it. We hated NSYNC. They were stealing our spotlight.
Backstreet Boys. They took it overboard and I'm sorry we didn't take it from them.
There became this like horse race.
AJ McLean took it even further, revealing that when both groups were in MTV's TRL studio, they wouldn't even look at each other. And the fans? Oh, they turned it into war. Backstreet fans called NSYNC wannabes. NSYNC fans called BSB washed up.
Girls felt like they had to pick a side. Like the girls in Times Square were either all about Backstreet or they were all about NSYNC, and you could not like both.
The media ate it up. This was pop music's ultimate showdown. But the rivalry? That was just the beginning, because what happened next, the lawsuits, the betrayals, the fall, and the comeback, proved the Backstreet Boys' story was far from over. And then came the biggest battle in pop history. In 1999, the Backstreet Boys dropped Millennium and shattered records. Over 1 million copies were sold in the first week. At that moment, they were undisputed kings. But just 2 years later, NSYNC fired back with no strings attached and broke those records again. It was brutal.
If I were the Backstreet Boys, I would have hated us too, you know? This is my assumption.
Fans were divided. The industry had never seen anything like it. But here's the kicker. Years later, both groups admitted something shocking. They were never true enemies. The rivalry, the tension, the competition, it was all orchestrated.
Us and NSYNC, we were brothers.
Yeah.
We were just on different teams. It was healthy competition.
Totally. Yeah.
They were just pawns in Pearlman's game. And speaking of Lou Pearlman, let's talk about the so-called genius behind the Backstreet Boys. 'Cause trust me, this is where it gets wild. Lou wasn't just managing the band, he was the smooth-talking wizard who promised them the moon, fame, fortune, and a life dripping in luxury. And sure enough, hit records, sold-out world tours, and millions of screaming fans painted a picture of pure success. Right? But behind those glittering lights?
That Lou felt bad. Because if Lou didn't feel bad, then he's a monster and he doesn't deserve anybody's sympathies.
Lou was robbing them blind. And when I say blind, I mean snatching every penny while smiling, right in their faces kind of blind.
Everybody, Lou's been lying to us.
And Brian was livid over this.
Basically, the Backstreet Boys had sold millions of albums. And yet, they were making less than minimum wage. Sounds crazy? Oh, it gets even crazier. Lou Pearlman had written himself into their contracts as the 6th Backstreet Boy.
So anything we made, Lou made exactly.
He was the 6th member.
Yes, you heard that right. While the boys were breaking a sweat on stage, Lou, who never sang a note and was, let's just say, a bit too seasoned to hit the dance floor, was scooping up an equal cut of their earnings. So while the boys were pinching pennies, Lou was out there living it up, private jets, luxury mansions, extravagant parties, all funded by their hard work. By 1999, the boys had had enough.
And Brian was livid over this. He basically said, guys, this is what's up. I want to file a lawsuit.
They sued Lou, demanding their money back. And guess what? NSYNC, who had been scammed just as badly, quickly followed.
We were making $35 a day, which was our per diem.
But wait, plot twist. Turns out, Lou wasn't just conning boy bands. Oh no, this man was running one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in U.S. history. He scammed over $300 million from investors, promising fake business deals that never existed.
Then utilized a different law firm to effectively collect the money. He decided that he was going to cheat us.
In 2006, the FBI finally caught him. He was arrested, convicted, and sentenced to 25 years in prison. And that's where his story ended. Because in 2016, he died behind bars. But by the time the Backstreet Boys finally broke free, the damage had already been done. And just when you thought the drama was over, oh, buckle up, because the real chaos was just beginning. Nick Carter, the ultimate teen heartthrob. Blonde hair, blue eyes, every teenage girl's dream.
The most wanted guy?
He's pretty much the most popular. He's the youngest of us all.
Yeah, he is.
But behind the cameras, his life was a hot mess. For starters, his younger brother, Aaron Carter,
Honey over there, and I really wanna meet it. People all around, you got to.
was spiraling into addiction and mental health struggles. Their parents, caught up in lawsuits, fights, and financial disasters. And trust me, no amount of fame could fix that train wreck. And in 2017, the drama exploded. Aaron publicly accused Nick of abandoning him during his darkest moments. And just when it couldn't get any worse, Melissa Schumann, a former pop star, accused Nick of sexually assaulting her in the early 2000s.
And then he puts me up on the counter, and then I can feel him, unbuttoning my pants. And I stop him and I go, I don't want to go any further.
Nick denied everything, insisting it was consensual. If Nick was the golden boy, AJ McLean was the wild child. Tattoos, sunglasses, that raspy voice. He had the ultimate rock star persona. But behind the scenes, he was falling apart. Years of nonstop touring, media pressure, and his own demons led him straight into addiction.
I mean, obviously, alcohol was like numero uno in my world, but cocaine definitely came into the picture for.
At first, he hit it well, partied all night, and performed the next day, rinse and repeat. But by the early 2000s, the cracks were showing. He was late to rehearsals, forgetting lyrics on stage, missing entire shows. It got so bad that in 2001, the Backstreet Boys had no choice but to stage an intervention. And yeah, this wasn't some quiet, let's handle this in private moment. Nope. Kevin Richardson called him out on MTV's TRL, right in front of millions of fans. You're screwing up. You need help. And we can't watch you destroy yourself. And just like that, AJ checked into rehab that same day. But rehab wasn't some magic fix. He relapsed multiple times. The struggle lasted for years.
The longest stretch of sobriety I've had, literally since I've been married, almost 10 years.
It wasn't until 2011, a full decade later, that he finally got sober for good. Even today, he calls addiction a demon I have to fight every single day.
I am beyond lucky to still be here talking to you. I am beyond lucky to be blessed with an amazing wife, with 2 beautiful kids.
But while AJ McLean was out here battling his demons, Brian Littrell was fighting a completely different war. And this one, it wasn't just about fame, money, or bad contracts. It was about life and death. Since birth, Brian had a congenital heart defect, something he had mostly kept private.
The status is it's an ongoing issue. I've been dealing with it ever since.
But by the late 90s, the nonstop touring, the brutal schedules, the never-ending performances, it was all catching up to him.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Is it kind of a stress-induced kind of thing?
It's all that, yeah.
And at just 23 years old, he had to undergo open heart surgery. Now, pause for a second and imagine this. You survive major heart surgery. We're talking your chest being literally cut open. And weeks later, you're back on stage, performing in front of thousands. That's exactly what Brian Littrell did. On the outside, he looked fine. But behind the scenes, everything had changed. The surgery left permanent damage to his vocal cords.
It's called vocal tension dysphonia, where the muscles around my vocal cords kind of strangle me in a way.
His once powerful, smooth voice now had a noticeable rasp. And for a singer, that's devastating. Imagine waking up one day and realizing the very thing that made you famous was failing you. But Brian wasn't about to go down without a fight. For years, he fought to get his voice back. Vocal therapy, specialists, endless hours of work. And here's the craziest part. He never fully recovered. But guess what? He never left the group either. Because sometimes, talent isn't just about skill, it's about determination. By the early 2000s, the unthinkable happened. The boy band era? Dying? The iconic NSYNC versus Backstreet Boys rivalry? Over. The music industry was shifting. Pop punk was in. Hip-hop was dominating. Suddenly, boy bands weren't the money-making machines they used to be. And after years of fighting the industry, legal battles, and their own demons, Kevin Richardson had had enough. Then came 2006, and boom, Kevin dropped a bombshell. I'm leaving the Backstreet Boys. Just like that, the group lost one of its core members.
Kev, you did leave, though.
Yeah.
Why did you leave?
Just, I wasn't into it anymore.
Kevin said he wanted to start a family and explore other passions.
Didn't have anything left in the tank to give, and I wanted to do some other things on my own, kind of experience some anonymity.
And while that might have been true, let's be real. After everything they'd been through, who wouldn't want out? For the next 6 years, the Backstreet Boys tried to carry on as a 4-member group. And they tried, really. They did, but let's be honest, it just wasn't the same. And for a while, everyone thought, well, that's it. The Backstreet Boys are done. But here's the thing about the Backstreet Boys. They weren't ready to disappear just yet. Oh no, the best plot twist was still to come, because in 2012, the unthinkable happened. Kevin Richardson came back. And when fans lost their minds and asked why, his answer, chills. This is my family. I never stopped being a Backstreet Boy. And just like that, the original 5 were back together, stronger than ever. But wait, it gets even better. That same year, they pulled off something no boy band had ever done before, a Las Vegas residency. Now, normally, Vegas residencies are where artists go when their careers are on life support. Sorry, not sorry. But for the Backstreet Boys, it was a rebirth. Their show, Larger Than Life, became one of the highest grossing residencies in Vegas history. And suddenly, The Backstreet Boys weren't just a nostalgic throwback, they were legends. But oh no, they weren't done yet. In 2013, they dropped In a World Like This.
You got me wide open.
Proving that they weren't stuck in the past. They were evolving. And when they finally got their star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, oh, it was official. They weren't just a 90s boy band anymore. They were icons. But these boys were far from done. In 2019, they did the impossible and dropped DNA, a brand new album.
Gotta say that was my favorite June, and I knew.
And guess what? It debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200. Let me say that again for the people in the back. #1. 26 years after their debut, they were still selling out stadiums. To put this in perspective, they became the only boy band in history to have a #1 album in the 90s, 2000s, and 2010s. Let that sink in. And as if that wasn't enough, their DNA World Tour became one of the highest-grossing boy band tours ever. I mean, talk about success. All right, Backstreet fans, let's talk about what the Backstreet Boys are up to in 2025. Because yes, they're still killing it. 3 decades in the game, and they're not slowing down. First, guess what? The Backstreet Boys are holding an Into the Millennium residency at the Sphere in Las Vegas. And if you're a diehard fan wondering when, it's supposed to start on July 11th. But that's not all. They're also releasing a remastered version of their album, Millennium, on the very same date. And let's be real, these guys aren't just thriving as a group, they've got their own thing going on too. Nick Carter is still out here dropping solo music and making moves in the entertainment industry.
I ain't nobody's superhero, but I can be your Superman.
AJ McLean is juggling fashion, music, and personal projects while staying his usual badass self. Howie Doro, Brian Littrell, and Kevin Richardson are balancing personal lives with big business ventures. And, let's be honest, raking in that BSB cash. Oh yes, let's talk money. After all the lawsuits, financial nightmares, and Lou Pearlman robbing them blind, you'd think the Backstreet Boys would be broke, right? Wrong. These men have built massive fortunes, and trust me, you're going to want to hear these numbers. Here's how much each member is worth today. Nick Carter is worth $35 million, and there is AJ McLean worth $30 million. Howie Doro worth $40 million. Brian Littrell worth $45 million, and Kevin Richardson worth $40 million. And the group as a whole? The Backstreet Boys are sitting on a $200 million empire, making them one of the richest boy bands in history. Not bad for a band that once made next to nothing under Lou Pearlman, huh? But wait, it gets crazier. Even in their 40s and 50s they're selling out stadiums, launching residencies, raking in cash from streaming merch and appearances. So one thing's for sure, the Backstreet Boys have cemented their place in music history. Whether it's their unforgettable hits, record-breaking success, or their ability to reinvent themselves for new generations, their impact is undeniable. Love them or not, their legacy as one of the greatest boy bands of all time is here to stay.